Welcome, everyone. I'm Angèle Bénard, National Director of Family Services with the Huntington Society of Canada. I'm honored to introduce Stephanie Bortnick, Biobank Coordinator with the HD Biobank at the Center for Molecular Medicine and Therapeutics, also known as CMMT. It is one of the largest HD biobanks in the world. Stephanie is also the laboratory manager for the Hayden Lab. Today, Stephanie is going to give a presentation entitled A Legacy Gifting Biological Samples to Advance HD Research. She will discuss how patient contribution is essential for scientific discovery. Stephanie will also describe how the HD Biobank is a valuable resource made possible by the generosity of the HD community, where individuals and families affected by HD unite with researchers to find solutions for HD. Through this session, you will learn about biobanking and how biological donation can promote HD research today and in the future. We will have a short Q&A at the end, so please enter any questions you have for Stephanie in the question tab over on the right. We will try to get to as many questions as we can. Stephanie, the floor is all yours.
Hi, Angèle, and hello, everybody. Thank you again for having me today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the work that we're doing here in Vancouver, British Columbia at the HD Biobank. So as Angèle said, we are talking today about leaving a legacy and gifting biological samples to advance HD research. So my name is Stephanie Bortnick, and as Angèle said, I'm the manager of the HD Biobank. So I'll give you a little overview of what we're doing. But first, I would like to just thank you for your interest in HD research, for your participation in HD research. The HD community coming together to fuel HD research is really remarkable. And I want to especially thank the collaborative efforts of the Huntington Society of Canada in helping to connect patients to a multitude of resources to help with HD, including research. So a little overview of what we'll be talking about today. First of all, I'll introduce you to the HD Biobank, who we are, what we do, what is biobanking. Then I'll be discussing with you our current expansion that's underway and our plans that we have for that, as well as our new Canada-wide sample collection initiative and how you can get involved in HD research and partner with us. So the HD Biobank is composed of our team, which includes our co-directors, Dr. Michael Hayden, who is the founder of the Biobank and has been a part of the Biobank since the 1980s, as well as Dr. Blair Levitt, who has partnered with the Biobank since the 1990s as the director of research at the Center for Huntington's Disease at University of British Columbia. We also have our clinical coordinator, Jen Collins. She curates and maintains our clinical database and patient outreach. And then there's myself, Stephanie Bortnick. I'm the biobank manager, and my role is to oversee community outreach and the operation of the biobank, from sample collection all the way to sharing samples with collaborators. So leadership and staff at the HD Biobank have come together under the same mission. And our mission is to collect and bank high-quality samples and robust clinical data. And this serves as an essential resource for HD research. We link patients and HD research to help fuel HD research. So what is biobanking? I've said the term, it's in our name. Well, biobanking is the process of collecting human biological samples for use in medical research. So we reach out to the community, people partner with us and share biological samples with us. We help facilitate the process of sample collection. We store and process the samples at our facility, and we curate data and sample cohorts to share with HD researchers across the world. So testing a hypothesis in research requires many samples. And so having a facility that can collect and pool the samples ready for a study is really helpful in HD research. And these are legacy donations. So HD patients and families have really given a literal piece of themselves to propel HD research, and we're very grateful for that. So our role here at the Biobank in this process is to, as I said, collect samples from HD patients and families, and we are custodians of these precious donations. We curate them, we process them, we ensure that they are stored correctly, whether it's ultra cold or in a certain chemical. And really, we are just custodians. We don't own these samples. They are still your samples. We just collect and process them. Our number one goal is to protect patient privacy. It's very important to ensure that everybody feels safe and comfortable donating samples to us. And we also must guarantee that samples are used in ethical research. We need to make sure that these samples are used. We need to get as much knowledge out of these samples as possible, but not at the cost of patient confidentiality or at the cost of the donor. So, as I said, we need to ensure that these samples are utilized to improve the understanding of mechanisms leading to HD and new therapeutic targets. So the Biobank is not new. We've actually been partnered with the HD community for the past 40 years. So in the 1980s, the Biobank was established by Dr. Michael Hayden when he collected thousands of biological samples from HD families as we all raced to find the genetic cause of HD. So once that was found, in 1986, 8 samples from the HD Biobank were used to create a predictive testing model. And then in the 90s, we established HD testing standards in BC, so the testing standards that are used to measure the expanded repeat. And these standards are used by diagnostic labs around the world, and that was a direct result of using the samples that were collected in the initial search for the genetic cause. And then since the 1990s, in partnership with UBC's Center for HD, we've continued to bank HD testing samples for ongoing research. And the samples that were collected back in the 80s are still being used in research projects today. So as I've said, it really is a legacy donation. You can donate tomorrow for research, you can donate samples from yesterday for research today, which is amazing. So I've talked a lot about biological samples, but what kind of samples am I actually talking about? So we collect a multitude of samples because, as we know, HD is a multi-system disorder. The mutant protein is found throughout the body. It does affect the brain, but there's other areas affected as well. So we do collect blood from which we can bank plasma and serum, DNA, and cell lines. We also bank brain and other tissues, and we have cerebral spinal fluid from many patients. So we've collected a lot of samples since the 80s, and having many samples is very important for research. As I said before, testing these hypotheses really does require many samples, both from people with the disease as well as people without, to compare. So we have DNA from over 5,200 individuals, and we have brain and other tissues from over 200 individuals. And the brain regions and the tissue types vary across the donors, but we have brain structures. We have over 20 different brain structures, from cortex to basal ganglia to the cerebellum. And the assortment of peripheral tissue includes spinal cord, heart, liver, spleen, and testes. Our collection also includes sperm and, as I said before, cerebral spinal fluid. So a little more about the HD Biobank. We are the only HD Biobank in Canada, and we are among one of the largest HD Biobanks in the world. And what makes us particularly unique is the quality of clinical data that we gather with each donation, and the number of large families that have been collected and followed for decades through the CHD and the small team of neurologists that have performed assessments on these patients over the years. So all the information from each donation, all the information about the donor, is stored in our clinical database. And this is an electronic database that helps us keep track of our samples and what each donation is. So in our clinical database, we collect a lot of data, including familial relationships, to help us see the inheritance pattern of the genetic disorder. We also collect demographic data on our donors, so their sex, their age, their ancestry. We collect information on their disease characteristics, so things like age of onset, what their initial symptom is, and what their following symptoms are, as well as their CAG repeat size and other genetic influencers. So this is an example of a family tree or a pedigree that we would collect from our donors. And again, this information is only collected if the donor is willing to share it. We will never ask you for information that you're not comfortable sharing. But this here is a great example of how the biobank can help facilitate research. So in this case, on this pedigree, you'll see that we can keep track of different generations of family members. So all the boxes are the males in the family, and all the circles are the females in the family. A filled in icon means that the person is affected with HD. An icon that is unfilled is a patient, is a family member with no HD symptoms. And an icon with a dot inside of it means that they had predictive testing done and they have the expansion but are not showing any symptoms of the disease. So an example that came up with this family is patient number 7 down in the bottom left. This woman, she was showing HD symptoms. Her age of onset was 38, and she was concerned because this symptom onset was about 10 years earlier than other members in her family with HD. So her father had HD, but he didn't show symptoms until 52. And her grandfather also had HD, but he didn't show symptoms until 49. So she's at least 10 years earlier than both of them. So we wanted to understand what could be causing her earlier onset. So she reached out to her family and they got in contact with us, and they all offered to donate samples so that we could look into this. And so we were able to collect samples from many people in the family and actually track the family's CAG repeat expansion. So we learned that her grandfather, again with the age of onset of 49, had a 42 repeat expansion, so in the symptomatic range. But her father had a slight expansion going up to 43, and then the daughter, the original patient that came to see us, she had an age of onset of 38. And her repeat expansion was 45, so 2 repeats greater than her grandfather. So with the fact that we were able to get so many members of this family, this is now a great family to study for other possible genetic components that could be leading to this expansion or this instability within the repeat. So this family has been great for understanding and propelling our research. So this is the information that we can get from donors who are offering their samples, and this is why collecting from families is really important, and we're really appreciative to all the families that have partnered with us over the past couple decades. So these generous gifts and samples from families with HD are crucial to HD research. The HD Biobank has contributed to critical discoveries in the HD field since its inception. So directly due to the samples that have been given to this HD Biobank, there have been dozens of publications that have just helped us to understand disease progression and really the mechanisms that lead to HD symptoms in patients. So patient contribution is essential for scientific discovery. So the HD Biobank samples have been used by HD labs here at UBC, and they have directly contributed to things like understanding disease progression, so defining genetic factors that influence onset and progression. So Wright and his team in 2019 found that there was a interrupting sequence in some patients with the CAG repeat expansion that led to the expansion being more or less stable in further generations. So kind of like the family that I showed in the previous pedigree. And we've also contributed to defining new targets for therapeutic development. So as I said before, understanding the mechanisms that lead to HD phenotypes, that lead to HD symptoms, such as cell death that occurs in some areas of the brain versus another. So Graham and their team in 2010 found, using these HD samples, that there was a cut site in the Huntington protein that leads to its stability or lack thereof, leading to further cell death in HD affected cells. So again, really great information that has come out of these samples that can lead to future therapeutic targets. So thanks to the generosity of the HD community over the years, when I say generosity, I include both the samples that have been donated as well as the financial donations that the HD community has given to the HD Biobank. In 2021, we were able to we are currently undergoing an expansion of our facility. So up until now, we've mostly had personnel who work in Dr. Hayden's lab also work in the biobank, but we now have dedicated personnel whose sole focus is the HD Biobank, which is very important. And that has led us to be able to expand our processes, including Canada-wide sample donation. So we have mostly collected samples up until now from the CHD, the Center for HD here at UBC, but now we're able to open up the process to the HD community Canada-wide. That has also created a need for updating our electronic database and also updating our aging facilities. So we're working on that right now. And we're also formalizing a system for sharing these samples worldwide. So this allows, with the influx of samples coming in, it means that we have more to be able to share with others as well. So that's what we're working on right now. So our Canada-wide sample collection really has come about through our partnering with the Huntington Society of Canada and especially the Social Workers Network. We're incredibly thankful for their partnership and helping us to reach the greater HD community across Canada. They've really been an excellent resource. We've shared with them information about what we're doing and how to get involved with research, and they've helped to share with us more information about patient advocacy and ways that we can help foster community relations. We've also sent brochures to HD clinics across Canada, again, allowing clinicians and patients to know who we are and what we are available for. And we're also establishing a network of pathologists across Canada to help us with the process of tissue donation. And this has been a bit of a labor of love, establishing this network of pathologists. They really have been instrumental in helping us reach across Canada. They have lent their expertise and their knowledge in tissue donation and separating out different brain regions for us. And they've been incredible and partnering with us and offering to come in off hours and on evenings and weekends, as these sample donations often need to happen within a 12-hour window. And they've really been excited about helping to foster HD research across Canada. So HD research and the HD community really is a network of cooperation. It starts and ends with patients and families. You really are the center of this cooperation. We are all working together to help establish better counseling, better treatments, and helping to facilitate your contributions to research. And accountability is built into this network. we know if we are doing right based on the impact that it's having on patients. So I'm going to give you a little story, a little example of how we're all working together for you. So, for example, we have Mr. Jones. He's a patient in Toronto that has presented with an interesting disease progression, and he wants to get involved in HD research. So he talks to his HSC social worker and lets them know that he's interested in research and needs to know more information. Well, the social worker, thanks to their partnership with us, lets them know that we do have a biobank, and we are available to help connect HD patients and their families with researchers. So he contacts us, and we're talking to him, gathering the clinical information that we talked about earlier, and we learn that he has a family history of the disease, and he has family in Halifax that presents with HD. And so we ask if he can contact his family members and ask if they want to participate. Really, we won't contact them directly. It's up to patients to facilitate that. So he talks to his cousins in Halifax, and yes, they want to participate, which is excellent. And so we then contact, again, the HSC network, and we say, are you able to put this family in contact with a Halifax local HD clinic for further neurological assessment and collection of clinical data regarding their HD diagnosis? So they do that, and we're able to collect blood and clinical data from that family to generate another one of those family trees that I showed earlier, the Pedigree. And that is just an excellent resource for HD research. So a researcher can take the samples and the clinical data from that family and formulate and test a hypothesis about what is leading to their interesting presentation of the disease. And now we have a great family to study that, hopefully furthers our understanding. So that is how an example of how we can all work together to fuel HD research. So another part of reaching the entire HD community across Canada is through the launching of our new website. So we launched this website in the fall of last year. And so that is www.hdbiobank.med.ubc.ca. And this is a great resource for both families with HD and researchers. So I have a small snapshot of our front page, and you can see that there's information about who we are, what we offer to the community, how we can connect patients with researchers. There is a whole area for patients and their families to learn about sample donation, to learn about consent, and to learn about how we facilitate those donations. There's an area for researchers to learn about what samples we have, how to collaborate with us, and how to get hold of us. There's frequently asked questions about our biobank, forms, so including our consent forms, just a quick access for that. And again, more ways to contact us and get a hold of us. We're always here to answer any questions you might have. On the website, there's also a link where you can join a mailing list if you want to hear about what we are working on and how our expansion is going, and how and what research we are collaborating with. So this Canada-wide expansion, as well as increasing our sample sharing worldwide, means that we've needed to update our electronic clinical database. So we have signed up for a database called Open Specimen, and this allows us to have stricter security to protect our donors. It also allows us to better track our samples, both inventory-wise, and see which samples are going out to which HD researchers. And that helps us to ensure that we're not always sending the same samples to HD researchers, that we make sure we're utilizing the entirety of our biobank. We are also working on expanding and updating our current facilities. So as I said, this biobank has been around since the 80s, and I'm pretty sure we have freezers that have been around since then as well. And these samples are so precious. We want to make sure that they are stored correctly, that they are inventoried and organized correctly so that we can make the best use of them. So we have purchased a new ultra low temperature freezer, so a freezer that goes down to minus 80 degrees Celsius, and that will allow us to protect our brain and tissue samples. We are also investing in barcode printers and scanners for our samples. Right now, most of our samples are handwritten, which there can be some legibility issues in writing on little tiny sample tubes. And we want to ensure that all samples that are sent can be utilized to their fullest extent, which means having the cleanest, most up-to-date data, which means being able to read the samples. So the other part of this expansion is really, we're excited to actually share the samples outside of UBC. Up until now, we have shared outside of UBC, but on a very selective basis. And now we are hoping to formalize a system for sharing samples with HD researchers worldwide to really fully utilize these samples. So there is a process for researchers who want to collaborate with us. So first of all, they can request the samples on our website. They can request the samples through our protocol submission form. And then our scientific review committee will review the sample request, and we will make sure that the request bears scientific merit, as well as we review it for ethical standards. We want to make sure that any sample that is used, any human sample, follows the strictest ethical standards for research with human samples. And then once the research has been approved, we will send the samples to them and collaborate with them. And as I said before, our website is a valuable resource for both HD patients and their families and researchers, so they can reach us at www.hdbiobank.med.ubc.ca/researchers for more information. So next week, we are actually presenting our biobank to researchers at the CHD conference, which is a very large international HD researchers conference that's happening in Palm Springs next week. So we're really excited to really be getting the word out there about our HD biobank and how researchers can use our samples to facilitate their research. So a little more information about our research collaboration. So again, the collaboration application information is found on our website, and completed forms along with an approved institutional review board ethics certificate can be sent to us. Our scientific review board will then assess the requests, will review and assess the requests for the availability of samples, scientific merit, and ethical standards. And UBC requires all collaborators sign a legal material transfer agreement before any samples are sent. And then samples will be shipped to approved research collaborators. And collaborators are asked to acknowledge the HD Biobank in any publications, and this helps us keep track of ensuring that the samples are utilized in excellent research, and also allows other researchers to learn about our biobank and how helpful our samples are to research. So I've spoken a lot about our biobank, and I do hope I've impressed upon you how important sample donation is to excellent HD research. And so I'm really hoping that by now you're wondering, how can you get involved? So I'm here to tell you that it's super simple, and our biobank coordinators are here to arrange everything and answer all your questions. So you can start your biobank education journey by, after listening to me, by viewing our website at www.hdbiobank.med.ubc.ca. And on here, again, this is our home screen, there's a whole section for patients and families where you can learn about the steps for successful donation and learn how to donate either blood and DNA or brain and other tissues. And there's also an area to reach and to see all of our consent forms, which are full of a lot of great information and ensure and tell you about how we protect your privacy and how we ensure the samples are utilized. So who can donate? Well, we welcome donations from anyone within the HD community, anybody with who has been impacted by HD, whether physically or emotionally, or a friend or family member. We ask anybody who is willing to donate to us if they can. So we are looking for samples. We're looking for blood and DNA. from HD patients and their family members. And it's important to note you don't have to be diagnosed. You don't have to go for predictive testing. You don't need to do any of that to donate. We will do our own genetic analysis of your samples, and we will not share that information with you. You have to go through the proper genetic counseling process to find out your CAG repeat signs. We're also looking for brain and other tissue from anybody after death. As I said before, it's very important for us to be able to compare those with HD to those without, to see what changes are actually occurring at the biochemical or the structural level within samples. So it's very important to get samples from anybody. A little overview of how a blood donation occurs. So the first step is informed consent. And so it's really important that you learn about biobanking, you read the consent form, you understand it. There is a consent form online to be able to read with a next of kin or a guardian who can sign on your behalf. That would be a donation assent form. So we have both of those forms on the website for you to review. And then once you've reviewed them and you've discussed it and you've decided you want to, we do ask that you contact us to register your consent. Our biobank coordinators will arrange for your donation at a local to you blood lab. We'll arrange for, we'll send you a requisition, and you can just go and get a couple of teaspoons of blood drawn. And then the local lab facility will ship the samples to the HD Biobank, where they will be processed and stored and curated as a resource for research studies. And a quick overview about tissue donation. Again, we ask that you review the consent forms, lots of great information, and just ensure that you talk this over with your friends and family member, as well as maybe your healthcare team. It's important that everybody knows what your wishes are, especially with tissue donations, because the donations have to happen so quickly upon your passing. It's just better if everybody is understood of what your wishes are. So again, contact us to register your consent, where we will arrange for your tissue donation. And then upon your passing, the donor will be transported to a local facility for tissue donation, again, with that network of pathologists that we are working with. Upon the final tissue donation, the donor will be transported to the next of kin's funeral home of choice, and that will occur within about 24 hours. We really do try to get you back to your family as soon as possible. Again, the samples will be processed and shipped to us, and we will curate them as a resource for research studies. So a little more detail now about the donation overview. So again, informed consent. Please learn about biobanking, read the consent form, and then let us know. Register your consent with us. And when you register your consent form with us, we will ask you more questions. We'll ask you demographic information. We'll ask you medical and family history. It's really important that we curate that clinical data that goes along with your sample. And again, any information you don't feel comfortable sharing, you don't have to. And so as you're talking to us, if you just say, oh, I don't want to share that, you don't have to. This is your sample, and this is your privacy, and we really are here to honor that and protect that. And then with sample donation, again, we will arrange all payment of your blood donation. So we'll provide you with a requisition. You can just walk into the lab and say, hi, I'm here. I need this sample collected and shipped to the HD Biobank. We will have already been in contact with the lab, and they will arrange everything for you. We will make sure that they're paid for their services, and all that funding comes from the HD Biobank. For brain and tissue donation, same thing. Upon passing, we do require further consent from your next of kin. So that's again why I asked you to share your wishes with your family members, because they will have to sign additional consent forms at or near time of death. Once we have all that prepared, we will have already arranged a pathologist to facilitate the tissue donation, and we will arrange transportation of the donor from their place of death to the autopsy facility, and then back to the next of kin's funeral home of choice. And again, that is a very quick process. We usually try to get the family member back within 24 hours. And then in both these processes, the samples are shipped to the HD Biobank. You don't have to do it. The facilities and the people that we work with, the community, will ship the samples to us, where we will, again, process them, process the clinical data, and make sure that they are curated for use in HD research. So I've given you a lot of information, and sorry if I've gone through it a little quick, but please feel free to contact us anytime. We have our clinical coordinator and our biobank coordinator, so Jen and myself are here to answer all your questions. You can reach us at any time at hd.biobank@ubc.ca. You can also phone us if you prefer, and our phone number is 604-875-3811. That is a Vancouver number. So if you're worried about card charges, or sorry, about long distance charges, please send us an email. I do hope to get a toll-free number in the future, but we're still working on that. And again, you can find all the information that you need at www.hdbiobank.med.ubc.ca. I definitely don't want to miss this slide because I really do have a lot of people that I'd like to thank. As I said, this is a cooperative network. We cannot do it without each other, and I really want to thank the HD patients and their families that have been so interested in HD research, and not just interested, but actually participating, giving a literal piece of themselves to fuel it. And we just thank you for your participation for the past 40 years. I want to thank the HSC social workers and the entire HSC team. Their collaborative efforts really are incredible in patient advocacy and ensuring that HD research really comes back and helps the patients. I want to thank the Biobank team, who's worked so hard with this expansion and just worked to facilitate the donations again for the past 40 years, and the Hayden Lab team, everybody that is offered to help over the past 40 years. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I do ask if anybody has any questions, please ask them now while I'm here, or contact us later if you don't feel comfortable speaking now.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was great. Before we jump into the questions, though, I just wanted to mention to folks that are attending that we do have the presentation ready for download under the Files tab over on the right. So please feel free to take a look there, and you can download Stephanie's presentation, and you'll have all the phone numbers and website links and all of the info she shared here today available for you at your fingertips. So Stephanie, we did have a couple questions come in as you were speaking. So the first one comes in, and Jody asks, how can we arrange to donate?
Yeah, great question. So please visit the website, review the consent forms that we have on there. There's a whole area for patients and families to review about how to donate and how to get a hold of us. And if you're uncomfortable browsing the web, please also feel free to give us a phone call or an email, whichever you're more comfortable with, and we can help walk you through the process. We can walk you through the consent forms. And then, as I said, once your consent is registered, our biobank coordinators will arrange for whatever donation you wish to give. So whether that's blood and DNA, or whether that's brain and other tissues upon passing, we will make all arrangements for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Deborah asks, how often can you donate?
Great question. Actually, you can donate throughout your life, really, and different donations are important at different stages of the disease. So, for example, right now we have a study going on where we are trying to collect cerebral spinal fluid from patients at multiple stages of their disease, so both pre-symptomatic in the early stages of their disease, as well as in the late stages of their disease. And this is a study that's going on through the Center for HD. And the reason for that is because there are certain biomarkers, so little changes that can occur at the biochemical level, for example, in your cerebral spinal fluid, that we can see changes in those biomarkers as the disease progresses, and those are really helpful to study when we're studying different therapies and different, especially in clinical trials. We can see changes in those biomarkers to see whether the treatments are working or not. So that's a great question. There are multiple stages of your life that you can give different samples. And please, if you're interested in it's called a longitudinal study, so a study that goes over multiple years, please just reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you.
Great. And I will have to stop after this one, though. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Is there a screening process for desirable samples, thinking about the HD warriors with other health conditions?
No, actually, in this case, as we've said, we will, any sample that, anybody that has HD or doesn't have HD, we welcome your samples. It's important to study samples in a multitude of backgrounds, I'll say, because we are not all the same people. We are all homogeneous people. We come from different backgrounds. We have different I want to say cofactors, but sorry, other things that are affecting our health. And it is important to study samples in everybody. So no, we don't have a screening factor. You will not be screened out. We will, though, during our initial interview with you, we will ask you for your clinical history, just so that we can make note. If something comes up and we go, oh, maybe this could be interfering with it, we just make note of it, but we do still accept your sample.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for that truly fascinating presentation outlining how people can contribute to HD research efforts in different ways. We're so grateful to you for sharing your knowledge and experience about this topic with us. It is time for a break now, and with the opportunity to visit the virtual exhibitor booths, our next session begins at 3:15 Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see you then. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.